When the financial system collapsed at the end of the 1920s, the world entered a period of suffering few generations had ever witnessed. Factories shut their doors, banks locked their vaults, and entire communities were thrown into desperation almost overnight. To most people, the Great Depression meant hunger, unemployment, and the slow erosion of hope. Yet, while millions struggled to survive, a small circle of powerful individuals quietly expanded their fortunes. What looked like an economic apocalypse to the public was, for them, a moment of calculated opportunity. The popular memory of the Great Depression is dominated by images of breadlines and abandoned farms. That suffering was real and widespread. But history often overlooks what was happening simultaneously behind closed doors. While families sold possessions just to eat, wealthy financiers and industrialists were accumulating land, companies, and influence at prices unimaginable only a few years earlier. Economic collapse did not destroy wealth. It redistributed it. Not everyone was caught off guard by the crash. Some recognized the warning signs years in advance. The explosion of credit, rampant speculation, and dependence on borrowed money were impossible to sustain forever. Those who understood how financial cycles worked did not panic when markets collapsed. They had already stepped aside. More importantly, they were ready to move back in when fear peaked. Joseph P. Kennedy was one of the most famous examples. Long before his name became associated with American politics, he had built a reputation as a shrewd and aggressive investor. During the stock market frenzy of the 1920s, Kennedy observed behavior that reminded him less of rational investment and more of mass gambling. Rather than follow the crowd, he exited early. When the crash came, he was positioned to benefit. While others lost everything, Kennedy preserved capital and later used it to acquire assets at deeply discounted prices. His wealth was not built during prosperity, but during collapse. Across Europe, old financial dynasties relied on a different advantage: diversification. Families with international networks did not keep all their wealth tied to a single market or currency. When banks failed and currencies weakened, their assets remained mobile. They moved capital across borders, shifted into commodities, and financed governments desperate for stability. In times of crisis, those who lend money gain leverage over those who need it most. Some individuals made fortunes by directly betting against the market. Traders who studied crowd psychology understood that euphoria always turns into panic. When prices rose beyond reason, they positioned themselves for decline. As selling accelerated, their gains multiplied. To the public, they appeared ruthless. To them, it was simply understanding human behavior at scale. Fear, like greed, follows predictable patterns. Industrial empires also emerged from the Depression stronger than before. Large corporations with access to capital were able to survive falling demand, while smaller competitors collapsed. Energy companies, utilities, and transportation firms controlled industries that people could not live without. Even when consumption declined, these businesses endured. When recovery began, they faced less competition and greater pricing power than ever. Financial institutions played a central role in shaping the post-crash world. Powerful banks positioned themselves as stabilizers of a broken system. They merged failing institutions, absorbed distressed assets, and worked closely with policymakers. Publicly, these actions were presented as necessary rescues. Privately, they concentrated control of the financial system into fewer hands. Regulation did not eliminate dominance. It reinforced it. One of the most misunderstood aspects of the Great Depression is the role of policy decisions. The expansion of easy credit during the 1920s fueled speculation, while sudden tightening afterward drained liquidity from the system. When money vanished, ordinary people were trapped. Those with access to political and financial networks were not. They moved assets early and survived the shock. As unemployment surged and banks failed, government intervention increased. New agencies and emergency programs were introduced to stabilize the economy. But stabilization did not mean equality. Funds flowed disproportionately toward large institutions deemed essential to recovery. Small businesses disappeared. Large firms absorbed their market share. The system did not reset evenly. It consolidated. One of the most dramatic moments came when private ownership of gold was outlawed. Citizens were required to surrender their holdings at a fixed price. Shortly afterward, the value of gold was officially raised. The result was a silent transfer of purchasing power away from ordinary savers. Those who had moved gold abroad or held influence escaped the loss. Policy framed as protection became another tool of concentration. Throughout the 1930s, the same pattern repeated across industries. Manufacturing, agriculture, real estate, and media all experienced consolidation. As foreclosures rose, wealthy buyers acquired property at a fraction of its former value. When recovery arrived, appreciation alone multiplied their wealth. Assets did not disappear during the Depression. They changed hands. Some financiers moved seamlessly between markets and government. By advising presidents and shaping economic policy, they ensured that recovery favored stability over disruption. Publicly, they were presented as experts guiding the nation through crisis. Privately, they positioned themselves to benefit from every shift in regulation and spending. Large industrial families expanded by anticipating future demand rather than reacting to current conditions. While consumers cut spending, these firms invested in infrastructure, materials, and technology. They prepared for a world that would eventually need energy, transportation, and defense. When growth returned, they were already in control of supply. The Great Depression also transformed labor. Wages fell, competition for jobs increased, and unions weakened in many sectors. For large employers, this meant lower costs and greater flexibility. Smaller competitors could not survive the pressure. Economic pain among workers translated into structural advantage for capital owners. As recovery slowly emerged, the public narrative shifted. The same families and corporations that survived the crash were rebranded as builders of modern prosperity. Philanthropy played a key role in this transformation. Donations to universities, museums, and public works softened public perception while strengthening influence. Charity became a strategy, not a sacrifice. By the time global conflict erupted again in the 1940s, the consolidation of the previous decade paid enormous dividends. Governments depended on existing industrial giants to supply fuel, machinery, chemicals, and finance. Wartime production rewarded those who already controlled capacity. The Depression had eliminated alternatives. Crisis had selected its winners. After the war, these fortunes extended beyond national borders. Financial institutions influenced global trade, reconstruction, and currency systems. Economic power evolved into political and cultural power. Education, media, and policy circles increasingly reflected the worldview of those who controlled capital. The lesson of the Great Depression was never about avoiding speculation. It was about positioning. Those who remained liquid during panic emerged dominant afterward. Those who owned systems rather than individual assets gained lasting control. Wealth shifted from participation to architecture. This pattern did not end in the 1930s. Later, crises followed the same structure. Financial shocks eliminated weaker players, while reinforcing larger ones. Bailouts preserved systems, not equality. Each collapse accelerated concentration. The billionaires who profited from the Great Depression did not succeed because they were immune to risk. They succeeded because they understood timing, leverage, and policy. They prepared while others celebrated. They waited while others panicked. And when the moment arrived, they moved decisively. History remembers the Great Depression as a tragedy of loss. In reality, it was also a turning point of ownership. The economy was rebuilt, but not redistributed. Ordinary people supplied the labor. A small elite retained control of what was built. Every major crisis since has echoed that same structure. Destruction clears space. Capital fills it. Control tightens. The names change. The tools evolve, but the outcome remains consistent. The Great Depression did not end an era of wealth. It refined it. And the system it created still determines who benefits when the world breaks. Hey everyone! If you enjoyed this video and want to stay updated with more insights on finance, make sure to subscribe to my channel, Financial Coin. And don't forget to hit that bell icon so you never miss our latest videos.